Hi guys, welcome to the Quick Guidance video series. For today's video, we have with us Mr. Saurabh Pinjani, who is an IIT Bombay and IIM Ahmedabad alumni. In the last video with us, Mr. Saurabh had discussed about the different career paths that are there in the financial sector. And we had talked about the investment bankers, markets, PVC, corp finance roles. So today, Saurabh is here with us to discuss what are the different things that it takes to prepare for these roles, specifically for interviews of various roles. So directly over to you, Saurabh.
So as discussed in the last video, finance can be broken down into four subfields, which are investment banking, financial markets, private equity and venture capital, and last is corporate finance. So we'll be looking at the preparation strategy for each of these in this video. First, starting with investment banking. And I'm going to club private equity with it because there's a large overlap. I will call out the differences where there are any. So in investment banking, we can just break down the prep into say three pieces, right? First one would be technicals. Second would be stock pitch, and last would be your general preparation, which would include HRQs and knowing current affairs pretty well. So starting with technicals, out here you would need to know accounting reasonably well, along with basic principles of corporate finance. What is free cash flow to equity, what is free cash flow to firm, what is WACC, stuff like that. So that falls in the technicals category. Next is a stock pitch. Now the idea is that you need to pick any company and within any sector, and you have to sort of build a strategic understanding of what the sector is like, how the company is positioned within that, what are the competitors, how are they doing, how is your particular company positioned with respect to its peers. So that's the strategic bit, and then you also have to build it up with a financial model. Which boils down to a valuation. So you need to do a three-statement, model followed by a valuation that you will do through DCF method and triangulate that, with relative valuation as well. So you do all of this, and the way these IB interviews really function is that initially, of course, there is an introduction and all that, but eventually you will be asked to pitch a stock. In the form of the question that do you follow any stock or do you follow any sector, and that's your cue to really start talking about this particular stock. And of course you will talk about the general storyline about how the strategic bit, and then you will the conversation will boil down to the valuation model. I think that's the second aspect that you have to cover. Last bit is the general prep, HRQs and relevant news items. So I think talking about HRQs, I think we've spoken about this fact that HRQs are really relevant because you have to really demonstrate why are you interested in investment banking, right? It's a specialized field, and so you have to really demonstrate that, and you need to cite reasons, and your reasons cannot be plainly based like I'm just interested in finance and therefore investment banking. So you have to really think through that answer, because if you don't satisfy the interviewer there, that might he might end your interview there itself without assessing how well do you know finance at all. So that's a very important question to answer. And last bit is general knowledge and just about current affairs. What's happening in the market, how's the industry doing, any major deals, so stuff like that. But don't have to be very rigorous and detailed there. Just if you read the newspaper in 2-3 months running up to your interviews, I think you will be good to go. Talking about private equity, so large overlaps. So the technicals bit is there, the stock pitch is there, and current affairs and HRQs exact same thing. The only difference would be the depth. So in private equity, your depth of the stock pitch would be much more. So they would expect your analysis to be much more granular, for you to have a much better understanding of the industry, the dynamics. So I think that is where you really need to focus. And also, the cultural focus would be a bit more. So private equity firms have a small team with very low churn, and therefore they're very picky about who they hire. So they want to assess whether you would fit into the culture of the firm. Now that's not something you can really fake or you can prepare about, but I think there will be questions around that. So that is something you should be ready to answer. So moving on to the next vertical, which is financial markets. Now, again, the first question that the interview will pose will be why markets, because again this is a very specialized role, right? Even more than investment banking. Investment banking has some great exits into private equity and stuff like that, but in financial markets your roles are a little more restrictive in terms of exits, and therefore they would ask why do you want to do this. So I think, yeah, you need to satisfy them on that front. Post which, the next general category of questions is mathematical puzzles, because here they're just trying to assess what's your problem solving ability. I mean, quantitative problem solving ability. So I think you can just pick up any mathematical problem puzzles book. Probably there's a club in every management school which provides you with these puzzles, and you should just solve those. Try to get good at those. Next step is technicals. So here, uh, in my experience, you of course should read about the technicals, but rarely do I see them really grilling you on that. But it's something that you should know just in case if you are asked, then you should be able to answer. And second factor is that since you had to demonstrate that you were interested in financial markets, if you don't know the technicals, then that raises a question on whether you were actually interested or not. So I think best source here would be reading this book called Hull. I think that's the standard book in all management schools when it comes to financial markets. They teach you that. Uh, so yeah, it would be suggested that you would go through the basic chapters of this book, right? Understand basic financial instruments, a little bit about how pricing is done, bond pricing is done, how option pricing is done, stuff like that. So if you just have a fair idea about this, that should be enough. And last step is news. So, financial markets work on information asymmetry. So what do you know better? Which sort of positions you to make a trade which could give you profits, right? So if you are not aware about what are the happenings in the world, what's really happening in the markets, then you're not cut out for the job. So that is something that you need to demonstrate. And I mean, here questions would be very, so for instance, I was asked, what is my view on demonetization, right? And the key factor here is that you don't have to throw out facts. You need to have facts, but then you have to also build your own view on how do you think it plays out. Your view could be right or wrong, but what's important is that you have a fact-based, analysis-based viewpoint, and that's very important, right? I think that's it about financial markets. Moving on to the last vertical, which is corporate finance. So I think these interviews or this process runs along with the marketing roles process, right? So I think there's an overlap there with marketing in the sense that your GDs are common. So the GD prep bit would be you would be referring to how the marketing folks do it. It's 100% overlap with that. So next step is your interviews. Yeah, so your interviews of course are separate. So I think two things to focus on there. First would be to know the company really well, because each company has a different product portfolio, could be in a different industry as well. So here you need to know what the company really does that before you step into the interview. And although it sounds trivial, but on the day of the interview, you might be interviewing with multiple firms which have different set of products. And at that point in time, you need to have clarity on which interview are you stepping into and what do they actually do. So yeah, it's not very trivial on that day. Last thing is technicals. Now here, the technicals would be similar to what you would see in banking, right? You would need to know a bit of accounting, a little bit of corporate finance, but of course the depth would be a little less. And in corporate finance, when I say you probably won't need to know valuation, right? But you will need to know concepts like project finance. So, and what is NPV, what is IRR, stuff like that. And I mean, that's it. I think that would cover the technicals bit. So I think that's it for the four verticals of finance. Best of luck.
That was a super informative session, Saurabh. I am guessing that everyone who is a finance sector enthusiast or who wants a job in this particular sector would totally benefit a lot from all of your advice. And thank you so much, guys. In case you have any questions, you can either directly contact Saurabh. His contact details would be there in the description, or you can just mention in comments and I will try to get Saurabh to answer those questions. Thanks a lot for connecting, and do let me know if there's any other topic related to finance that you want us to create a video on, and we will work on that. Thanks a lot.